Good morning. It's good to see y'all this morning. Find someone to smile at. Let's brighten this place up this morning. All righty. Welcome to Williams. If you are a visitor this morning, you'll get a second welcome. Welcome. And you visitors, very important, we would love for you to fill out our flappy sheet of paper. It has welcome above it. We just want to have a record of your visit. The rest of you grab your bulletin. We have a lot going on, which is a good thing. So let me go over all this good stuff in here. Tonight, we will have service here at 6 o'clock. So please come in here. I would like to give a thank you to all of you who helped out cooking goodies to snack on for our fifth quarter. We had a large number of kids and plenty of food. So thank you for helping out with that if you did. Now there are some meetings going on. So listen up. Sometimers. If you're planning to go to Gatlinburg in December, and if you are going to the Apple trip, you need to meet with Mike Duncan after the service. So Gatlinburg trip, Apple trip, you have a meeting. Now, Finance Committee, you will have a meeting at 3:30 in the library. Church Council will be at 4 o'clock in the sanctuary. Now, if you are a chairperson of a committee and you are not able to be here, please have another member of your committee to come in your spot. If you could do that, please. Then the daycare committee will meet in the library at 5 o'clock. So read over that. And this Wednesday night, we will not have service, but instead we will have a blood drive. So that is exciting too. Now, please continue reading over. There's a lot more that you need to know about. And we might have a pop quiz next week. So, all right, so y'all have been sitting way too long. And I made y'all hush for a few minutes. So let's just stand up and continue talking and shaking hands.
Good morning. It's good to see you this morning. We're here to worship and lift our praise and song to Jesus Christ, our living Lord, today. Our first hymn is 552 on Jordan and Stormy Banks. We will stand and sing all 4 stanzas. You join with us, please, and we'll sing.
I am bound for the promised land.
553 in the sweet by and by. 553, all three stanzas, please.
Good morning. I have two special guests this morning that are going to talk to you about the importance of giving blood. They're special guests, but probably they feel very at home here. I know most of you know Gary Britton and his daughter Megan Britton. They're going to talk to you. Our blood drive is next Wednesday from 2:30 to 7:30, so I encourage you to come out. And I'm trying to give everyone different aspects of reasons to give blood and the ways to give back, because you really are saving lives. So they're just going to talk to you a little bit about that. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for praying for us, especially for Megan this past year. She is about 3 weeks away from completing her chemotherapy, and we are very, very much when Megan was diagnosed, we were told the name of her cancer was rhabdomyosarcoma. I'd never heard of it either. It was something, this has been an education experience, if anything. But one of the side effects of chemotherapy is that it just wipes out your blood counts. And so very early on last year, we found out that her blood counts were low, and we went into the clinic one day and they told us, well, she's going to have to get blood today. So to my surprise, she got 2 units of blood that day. This has been a very regular experience. Chrissy asked recently that if we knew how many units she'd received. They're doing the research right now. Friday afternoon, the nurse didn't call us back. They've asked the blood bank to look up those numbers. But over and over again through the past year, Megan has gone in either to clinic or starts running a fever that sends us to the emergency room, and she has received blood and platelets over and over again. I don't even start to speculate on how many units. We have been in the clinic at Children's Hospital, which, by the way, is hematology and oncology. And I have seen as many as 6 children in chairs in the clinic receiving blood all at the same time. Megan has also been in there to receive blood And because the supplies are so low, they can only order 1 unit at a time. She was in the hospital back during the summer, and while she was there, received 3 units of blood and 3 units of platelets in one hospital visit over a few days. But with 2 of the units of platelets, we were told that they didn't know if she would receive the platelets because they weren't available. And I say all this to you because I started giving blood back when I was in college and have done so fairly regularly across the years. Megan's experience has been very different from what her mom's was in going through treatments and all. Sharon did receive a few units of blood across the year, but not the way Megan has done this past year. And so giving blood was always a very faceless activity. I did it because I knew that there was someone who needed that blood. This year, I've not given any designated units of blood because we never know when Megan's going to need that blood. But I'm very grateful to people who go very regularly and give blood, or if they're in Birmingham, to give platelets, because it really has come to rest with me that it's not just my daughter, but a lot of other children at the hospital who need blood on a very regular basis so that they can keep fighting the disease that the way they need to be. It has come home to roost with me in that way. And so I want to say to some of you who give regularly, and I meet folks at blood drives all the time that can tell me how many gallons of blood they've given across the years, and they keep up with it. But to some of you who are a little bit skittish about it, it's a little bit, I don't watch needles go in me. I don't. I just look the other way while they access, and then I look the other way when they take it out. There are some people who get a little bit dizzy. I kid my college students and tell them that if you're giving and you pass out after they finish getting the blood, we'll drag you out of the way. To make room for another person. So I want to say to you that, swallow that fear just a little bit and come on out and give blood, especially here at the church. You're among friends who will take care of you. Put those wet claws on your forehead and things like that. But giving blood is an important part of what we can do for other people. And as Christians, I believe this is a part of where Jesus said, when you've done it unto one of the least of these, you've done it unto me. Thank you.
And be looking for our local celebrity here, Megan, on the Cable One commercials that will be airing. We're filming Tuesday, and she's going to be our spokesperson for the month of October in our Monster Fest blood drive. And just keep them in your prayers. This week, she's actually going tomorrow for another treatment. Thank you.
Good morning. Come on, guys. I know y'all can do better than that. I have you every day at school. Good morning. Good. I want to talk to you a little bit about today is I want you to really think in your mind. So I want everybody to close your eyes for just a minute. And I want you to get a picture of what you think heaven is like. Everybody got their picture? Okay. Not yet. All right, open your eyes. Now, when you get that picture in your mind, and today I was looking at our bulletin, when we get to heaven, when we're Christians, when we get to heaven, it is going to be an awesome place. Did everybody picture an awesome place? How many of you pictured you doing something fun in heaven? Did you do something fun? How many of you didn't really get a good idea of what you wanted to see, what you might see when you're in heaven? Very good, Brody, yes. You know what I picture, especially when I see you guys come down every Sunday, and Mike or Nikki or somebody else sitting up here with you, I picture Jesus sitting right there in the middle of you guys. And you know, just like I know lots of you have your parents read a book to you at nighttime. How many of your parents read a book to you at night? You read a book? Or you read a book to them? Do you read a book to them? At nighttime, I picture Jesus sitting right in the middle of you guys in heaven. I picture you guys sitting there and Jesus talking to you. He may not be reading a book, but he's talking to every one of you and looking at every one of you and bringing his arms around you. And maybe it's even kids that are not here with you, but you know kids, but all the kids around you. Every morning, Sunday morning when we're together, that's a neat thing to think about. And you know, when we think about heaven and we think about God, there's a lot of things that God has prepared for us when we get there. He wants us to be able to run and play. He wants us to be able to have friends, maybe friends that we lost along the way. Because I think about friends that I had through school and maybe no longer here, or my grandparents, you know, my granddaddy that's no longer here. And I can't wait till that day that I get to see those people that have gone before me. And I want you to think of that as Mike does our worship today. I want you to think about what's your picture of heaven, and when you get there, what do you want to do, and what's something you might want to say to God when you get to heaven? What's something you want to talk about with Jesus when you get up there? And I want y'all to think about that today as you go through this week, and as you continue to come to church. You know, because in John 3:16, you hear this verse all the time. It's that God so loved the world that he sent his only Son, that whoever believes in him, that we will have eternal life. And so I want you to think about that. And when you see pictures of heaven, of what people think heaven might be, I want you to get your picture of heaven and what you think heaven's going to be like, and what you think you're going to be doing when you're in heaven. Okay? Thank you guys. Y'all have a good week.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Gary, for your encouraging words. Thank you, Megan. God bless you, sweetie. Tell you what, let's do. Let's just give this young lady, let's just give her a hand clap of encouragement. How about that? I've been there and done that, Megan, but not quite as bad as yours, honey. Not quite as bad as yours. I know what you're going through. God bless you. This church is behind you, and all your other friends. So we're just going to continue to lift you guys up and pray for you guys. 555. We're marching to Zion. All four stanzas. Join us, please, as we sing.
All Today I'll be reading from the Gospel of Matthew in chapter 20. Our passage there is a parable that Jesus told. And before I read, I wanted to tell you a couple of things. I was given this announcement. We're going to be feeding the defensive team for Jacksonville State football team this Thursday here at the church. And if you would like to, there'll be about 40 or 50 of them, which you could sort of multiply, by appetite and maybe say 100. But they'll be doing that Thursday night here at the church. And if you could help feed the players, there's a sign-up in the foyer for you if you want to bring a covered dish of some sort so they can have some good old Williams food and cooking this week. And the food needs to be here between 6:30 and 6:45. I guess they could even bring it a little bit earlier if they needed to and leave that in the kitchen, because I know there's some other things going on that evening, okay? So apparently, if they play well, they get fed well during the week. And so our defensive coordinator has installed that rule, and it worked against Chattanooga yesterday, didn't it? Good. And Greg, I guess you'll get to eat there too with them, I hope. So you hope they play well. Okay. Good. Well, let's try to turn out and help out feeding the players on Thursday, and we're real proud of our school and the hard work that they're putting in as players. The other thing I want to let you know about, two other things quickly. We're doing some work in the courtyard area that you'll see, and we'll tell you more information about that later. At some point, it will be like a prayer garden, a place for meditation, and for you to sort of be alone with your thoughts. But also there'll be bricks that'll be down there that will be given as a memory monument, as a memory garden for people who are members of our church who have passed away and now in heaven. So if you would like to participate in that, you'll hear more about that coming up, and I think in our business meeting in October you'll get a thorough report about it. But I wanted you to know why things have been going on over there in case you were wondering what the dust was about. And I appreciate the people getting that together. And then finally, I want to invite all of you to come back tonight to church. We've been doing a visioning process at our church, and a lot of you are very well aware of that. Some of you newer ones may not be, but for over a year, we've been talking about what we believe God wants us to do and the next steps for the future of our church. And we're beginning to get into the phase of actually making some recommendations from the vision team of our church about specific steps and specific things that we're going to be doing in the future that we feel God is leading us to do. We'll hear about that in October, but tonight I just wanted to go through and to catch everybody up. We sort of took the summer as a fallow time for all of us to rest, and especially for the vision team, all the hard work they've put in for over a year. So tonight what I want to do is just go through the process of what we have done and where we've been and where we sort of think we're headed, and give you an overview of that, allow you to ask some questions if you need to. So I hope that you'll come and everybody can sort of be caught up and get back on the same page as we prepare to go forward in the future. And please remember to continue to pray for our vision team members as they get ready themselves to present to you on a Sunday morning in October the goals and the vision paths that we think God has laid out before us for this church. And it's very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to it. Let's turn our attention to the gospel. Jesus tells this parable about laborers who were hired by an owner to go work in his vineyard. It's found in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 20, and I'll begin reading in verse 1. Jesus says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' So they went. When he went out again about noon, and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock, he went out and found still others standing around, and he said to them, 'Why are you standing here idle all day?' They said to him, 'Because no one has hired us. There is no work.' He said to them, 'You also go into my vineyard.' When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, 'Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first.' When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, 'These last worked only 1 hour, and you've made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat.' But the owner replied to one of them, 'Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am so generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last. This is God's word for us this morning.
Watch
How many of y'all have seen or are familiar with these signs, these billboards that have on them messages from God? Have y'all seen those before? I like those for a lot of reasons. There are a few that I don't like. Somebody wrote those messages, an advertising agency, and I've heard a lot of stories about how that got started. Some of the billboards go like this: come for a visit and bring the kids, God. One of them said, if you take my name in vain again, rush hour will last a little bit longer today, God. Love the wedding, invite me to the marriage, God. It's pretty good stuff. And interesting things, and you imagine in traffic riding along and seeing these billboards. What I like about those is the simple fact that when you're driving along and you see these, maybe you get the idea that God does have a message for you. Something that's unique and special for you. I like that because I think that a lot of us have sort of gotten an idea that God is very distant and He has like a general message for the world, but maybe not a personal something just for me. And I think these billboards help us a little bit to think about the idea that it is possible in our faith to understand that God has some unique desire to know you and to communicate with you and to say things to you and direct you in the uniqueness of who you are in your life. I think a lot of people have sort of gotten their religion mixed up, and so they think about this as some kind of business deal. And the church has helped them along the way with that misconception. We've told you, for instance, that if you want to be a Christian, there are 4 or 5 steps that you must take in order to be a Christian. And so you would do this and do that and do that, and then when you finish, you'll do this, usually with a professional that we've hired to help you with the process, and that would be the pastor. And then after that, we will have a vote, a business transaction, and then you'll be finished. And we may enroll you in a program, Sunday school or discipleship or whatnot. And I think what that teaches people is that what you're entering into is an organization, it is a religion, it is a transactional thing, and what we miss is, I would like to come eat supper with you, God. I'd like to ride to work with you, God. I was interested in how the kids are doing in school, God. What are we missing? In all the transactions and the processes, I think a lot of times what we're missing is the relationship. You know, Jesus didn't start a religion. He started a movement by gathering people He called friends alongside of Him. And the friends would walk together and they would talk together. They would eat fish together. They would go to people's houses together. They would discuss things. Sometimes they even argued a little bit together, like relationships are. You do know about relationships, don't you? Relationships can be messy. They can be exciting. There's a lot of uncertainty in relationships. There's a lot of dependence in a relationship. And sometimes in relationships, you're maybe a little unsure of the next step, and you might even guard yourself a little bit, at least until you know the person better and you trust them more. And the more you know a person in a relationship, maybe the more you begin to reveal or become more vulnerable and you open your hearts to them, not feeling like your heart will be broken anymore. Okay? And that's a relationship. Relationships have rules, but there are also exceptions to all those rules. And one thing that happens in relationships is that we make mistakes in those relationships. So part of what happens is hopefully forgiveness. And y'all understand about relationships. That, to me, is more like what Jesus is wanting, what God was desiring when He called you to Himself, instead of the business deal, the transaction part of it. Now, I know that there's got to be some of that in there. We went to the St. John Catholic Church in Savannah on our trip this week, and it was a beautiful, beautiful church, one of the oldest churches in the South, and they had remodeled recently and all that, and they have a brand new baptismal font. And Catholics baptize children, babies, and they have just a baptismal font. They obviously don't dunk them. They just sort of sprinkle or pour the water on them. And they had the font at the very beginning. Like if you were walking into church, there would be where the baptism was. You had to walk around it actually to get in to the church to worship. And the lady that was telling us about our church said the reason it's there is because it symbolizes that that's the way you enter into the church. It's through baptism. You have to be baptized, and then from that step, then you walk into the sanctuary where there are other things that go on in that Catholic tradition, which is the majority of Christians in the world. A lot of stuff. One of the things is you have to do that first, and then there's some other stuff you do before you get to come to the altar, where you actually come up here and get the grace of God symbolized in bread and wine or juice, the Lord's Supper. Okay? It's a process. And I understand that we have to have that. I think humans need structure. I think Christianity is better for the structure that we have, and we have it in Baptist circles too. But what I simply want to ask you to think about is what about your relationship? The one you have right now with the head of this whole thing. The guy, the God we call Jesus. How's that going? You know, I think it's possible to be a good church member, be on a committee, sing in the choir, attend every Sunday, and never meet the guy that's the boss of the whole thing. To sort of be able to go through all the steps in the process and still keep your heart not vulnerable, but protected, not sure. And the less you encounter Jesus, then the more you'll keep your heart protected. It's like any relationship. The more you're with somebody and the more they demonstrate faithfulness to you, the easier it is to let go of your heart, isn't it? But if you're not around them much, and you know how it is, you'll share some things. What do we talk about? The weather, sports, Iraq, the election, until we find out that they're a different party from us, and then we change it back to the weather. But the more you know somebody, you get a little deeper. You go, below the surface. It's possible, I'm afraid, to be in the church, and if you're not careful, you can go through your whole life being a good member of the church and forget about the movement. Forget about the relationship. There was a young missionary couple who went over to someplace far away, and they loved peanut butter a whole lot. They were leaving their home, their families. They had little children, but they were leaving mamas and daddies still, friends, high school, all the stuff that we value in our home, to go do that. And the missionaries that they worked with, and a lot of missionaries, especially in the old days, were hardened and brazened, and it was just tough. And one of the things they told them is they said, you keep getting shipments of peanut butter from the United States, and if you're really spiritual, and if you're going to mature, there's some things you must give up. Your attachment to the peanut butter is getting in the way with your mission work. And it was constant criticism, and criticism of this young couple. And so finally, what did they do? They threw up their hands and they gave up and they went back home. All over a jar of peanut butter. Isn't that silly? But sometimes there are people out there who think that you guys and me will quibble over peanut butter with them. We're so big into rules, they think. We're so big into the process, the proper way to worship God, the right way to be a follower of Jesus. Those things that are part of the structure, that these folks are going to miss out the relationship. It's about relationship. When we get together and worship God and try to serve God, and even when we have the structure, it's about relationship. Now, in this story, I was reminded of the time that the youth and I went to Atlanta a while back. It's been a few years ago now. And we went to Buford Highway in Atlanta, where a lot of international people, immigrants, are there. And one of the things we did was we drove down, we went to a little apartment complex, and we did some work with mostly Hispanic children. But what did we see along the road? There were a lot of men just sitting around, standing around. What were they doing? And we had a van, by the way. You remember we kept thinking they're going to just hop in the van with us. Why? Because every day they stand around those street corners in Atlanta waiting for somebody in a truck or a van to go pick them up and take them, and they'll do some day labor work. And then they'll go back, drop them off. And the next morning they'll get up and they'll stand around. And if nobody comes with a truck, they'll just stand there idle. Sounded a lot to me like this story, didn't it? Where the owner is going to the marketplace and he sees these folks just standing around, and he puts a bunch of them in the back of his truck and he takes them and says, I got a vineyard and need a work done. And he drops them off. And then he goes back at 9 o'clock and at 3 o'clock and even at 5 o'clock. And there's still folks standing around looking for work. And these folks want to work. They want a job. They want a purpose. They want to do something with their hands and their minds and their body. And the owner has the ability to give them what they can't give themselves, which is a job. They can't create one for themselves. And they're standing around all day. And here he comes, put them in the pickup truck. And this owner is such a great owner that he'll just keep coming and looking for more people to fill up his vineyard. Probably, especially the 5 o'clock crowd, they can't really accomplish much. The owner is not getting a lot out of that group. And then he goes at the end and pays them. And we all thinking, I'm sure, this ain't fair. The folks that got there early in the morning, and they said it themselves, we've been burdened, and the heat of the day, we've had to handle all of that. And these folks that came at 5, not only did they come late, but you paid them first, and you paid them the same thing. And this is what they said, you made them equal to us. You know, they didn't say you paid them the same thing because their identity was so wrapped up, I guess, in money. You did that to us. Jesus closes with a strange statement. The first folks will be last, and the last folks will be first. You know, my favorite billboard of all those billboards is a simple one that says, I love you, I love you, I love you, God. That's my favorite one. It's the best message ever. That's the whole point of everything God's ever tried to do with us. The stories, the life, the interaction, it's the whole point. For God to simply try to drill it into our heads. I love you. I love everything about you. I created you. I made you. I know you. I want to be involved in your life. I want to be a part of everything that you do. I'm always around, but I'd like to really be inside. I won't bust the door down, but I'll be there if you want me, because I want you so bad. I love you, and I truly want to be your God. In fact, I envision a future in heaven where there'll be no more needs for books or anything like that, no more needs for light bulbs, no more need for a sun, because I'm going to warm you with my presence. And you won't have to worry about memorizing anything anymore, no matter how good or bad your memory is, because it'll all be written in your heart. You'll know me as I know you. You will be fully known, and I will be fully known. That's the desire of God all along. John Claypool, one of my favorite authors, mentioned to him before, he's passed on now, but he wrote a book called God is an Amateur. He took a lot of heat for that title, God is an Amateur. But he said, you know, what I was writing about was that the word amateur, when you trace it back, it's the root word amor, which is love. It's love. And he said, amateur was a word that developed because it described people who just did stuff because they loved to do it. They loved to do that. They weren't pros. They weren't getting money to do it. They weren't forced to do it. They did stuff because they wanted to do it. And so he's writing there about God, and he said, people, you know, today when we think about amateur, they think about somebody sort of incompetent. They're not as good as a professional. But really, I was trying to get back to the original meaning of the word to say to you, God didn't have to create you. God wanted to. God didn't have to love you. God wants to love you. God didn't have to send His Son to die on the cross for you and me. God wanted. Jesus said, I want to go. I want to go. I want to go help out in the best way we can. I want to be a part of this creation. I want to share life. You hear what the owner said? Don't I have a right to be generous? Can't I just give if I want to give? Because that's the kind of God we have, y'all. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? And He just loves us so much that He wants to be that way. Out of that love came some concepts, and they're a little hard. I want to just talk about them for a second today. Grace and mercy. Grace is when you get something you didn't deserve. And mercy is when you get forgiven for something you shouldn't have done. Grace and mercy. And then people started thinking about, well, what was Jesus doing on the cross? There's a lot of things there. Some people said He was substituted for you and me. That you and I all messed up badly. And we know we have. We've done stuff that we know we shouldn't have done. We call it sin. And it separates us from God, in whom there's no sin at all, and it cannot even exist in His presence. And so we did something bad, and so they said, well, something had to happen, and so Jesus died on the cross. He took our place. I remember when I was younger, with our age, we used to tell them about the boy who did something bad. It was the old days when they actually sort of get that thing and whip you and spank you in school. And the boy that did something wrong, somebody took his spot, and he claimed he did it instead. And so they whipped the wrong boy. They whipped the innocent boy. And the boy that deserved it, how do you think he felt about that? Man, he loved the boy that got whipped for it. That's called the substitutionary view of atonement. Somebody was substituted for you and me and took the punishment that we should have had. Jesus was substituted. Some people say there's a ransom theory, that God had sort of allowed us freedom and we messed up so bad and now the enemy owns us. We become His, and Jesus paid the price so we could be safe. There's a lot of theories like that. I don't know about you about the theories. I just know I need Jesus. And as simple as that. I need Jesus today. I need Jesus to comfort me. I need Jesus to challenge me. Sometimes I'm like Paul, I got a war going on inside of me, and I'm a preacher. I do some stuff and say some things, and doggone it, why in the world did I do that? I don't want to do it, as Paul said, but I still end up doing those things. And there's things I should be doing that I don't do. Paul said there's a war going on inside of me all the time. And so I'm thinking, at least if Paul did it, I'm okay. I'm in pretty good company. Are you there? You do that? I do that. I need Jesus. I need Him to forgive me. I need Him to restore me. I need Him to guide me. I mean, there's a whole list. I need Jesus very badly. And I like that when I think about the Bible, maybe you can think about it in the Bible. Can anybody think of anybody, any person, a name of a person in the Old Testament? Can anybody think of anybody? Get that name in your head right now. And I'm going to ask you to hold two names. Get a name of somebody in the New Testament. Can anybody do that? Real quick. I bet you everybody in the room can do it. Everybody in the room. Even if you're not sure about the Bible. Let me just mention some that you might have named. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rachel, Miriam, Moses, Aaron, David. There's a bunch of names. New Testament, Peter, James, John, their mama. There's a lot of them. Mary Magdalene. And there could be more. Luke. You know what's amazing about the Bible is all this stuff's about you and me. It's about people like you and like me. It's about names of people. There was a guy named Abraham. There was a gal named Sarah. There was a boy named David. There was a man named Peter. There was a disreputable woman named Mary. It goes on and on. You're there, and I'm in there too. The focus of God has always been on each one of us. You know, sometimes we think about the whole group thing, and I think that's there, but it's also about you. It's about each individual. Why would God spend so much time on the individual? Well, can't I be generous if I want to be? Can't I love each one of you and not just God love the whole world, but just love you if I want to? That's God. You know, one thing I love about this story, whether it's early or late, that owner's out looking for you. God was out looking for you before ever you were found. And I believe He's still looking out for us today. I love you, I love you, I love you, God. I love you. I love you. I love you, God. Now, that's not business. That's relationship. And I do want to simply say to you, that's great stuff. Don't you ever lose touch with that. When you lose touch, when you quit feeling and thinking about His love for you, then you shift over to a religion that's empty, it's dry, it's boring, it's not moving, because you're not in a relationship anymore. You're sort of doing the motions and you're going through stuff. If you want a formula to be misery, to have misery in your life, be like those first workers. They started out, they had to, standing there in the morning looking for work, and here comes the guy in the truck, and they said, hey, you, and you. Come on and hop in. How did that make them feel? How does it make you feel when you get picked to do something? When somebody selects you out of the crowd? That's awesome. From the days we were little children, dividing up into 2 teams. Here are our captains. I'll take John, Fred, so-and-so, and when you get picked, I didn't want to be the last one picked, did you? It was awesome to be the first one picked. It indicated you might be pretty good. How did those folks feel when they first got picked? They had to feel good. But something happened from the early morning you got picked to the end of the day. You want a formula for misery in your life? Be like those folks, because what they did is they forgot how lucky they were to be picked. They forgot how blessed they were to be saved from the idleness of nothing, to have something that they could not create for themselves be given to them. They forgot. I always thought how funny it was. Funny in a bad way. Funny in a funny way. Funny that these folks are complaining at the end of the day, complaining and grumbling, the Bible says. And this is what they get, and this is what they complain about. They complain because they got a job, they got to work all day. What are one of the things people wish for? I wish I could have just been with Jesus for one full day. They got to work with Jesus all the time. They got to do His work in His vineyard, doing His purposes all day long, and they got paid for it. And they grumble and complain. I think that's sort of funny, don't y'all? It's just a strange thing. One of the things you and I got to beware of is the sideward glance. We went to Hilton Head on our trip this week, some of us, and one of the things we did was to take this little boat ride. We were going out to see dolphins. And along the way, we saw birds in the marshes, and it was just beautiful, the sun, the water. The water there rises and falls with a tide about 12 feet, and it's just amazing to see. Oyster beds, all that kind of stuff. The dolphins were jumping over beside our boat. We were all trying to get a picture, and I've got about 50 pictures of the ocean. You know, the dolphins are just too quick for a digital camera. Sorry. But anyway, it's beautiful out there. One of the things we see as we go through there are these homes, and he's pointing out these homes, and one of them was $14 million. The bargain price, by the way. Anybody interested? And you know, some of them went down, but there was one place, and this was me. This was me. This was my sidelong glance. This guy had bought an island. He owned the whole island. And he had a house, the whole bit. In fact, they said a bowling alley in it, and just, I mean, you know, you had it, everything. Comes about 2 weeks a year, I guess, and visits. And there at the end of the island, these 2 palmetto trees with a hammock tied between it. Now, that's my ideal place right there. That's it. That's it. And you know what? I thought, as we're going through that boat ride, you and I on vacation, if we're on that boat, you can choose to see the water, the dolphins, the birds, feel the breeze, be with good friends, or you can think, man, I wish I had that. That's a sidelong glance, isn't it? I tell you what, everybody on that island, everybody in this church can always look to somebody else and say, I wish I had that. Or you can choose to be happy. God's given us. God has given us all a job. He's got a big truck, and He's invited you in, and you didn't deserve it, and I didn't deserve it, but He just did it. Can I be generous if I want to whoever I want to be? And that's God. That's the way He is. And I think that it is our responsibility to try to stay in touch with that. If you forget to grace, if you forget to think about it, to dwell on it, to feel it, if you forget how lucky you are. When I was running on the beach one day, feeling pretty lucky but also running, and I'm sort of complaining to myself as I'm running now, I don't really want to do this, but you know, Andrew's on cross country and those kids are way past me now, so I'm now like moving down the list in my family, you know, because I'm getting older. And I'm also older too, and I know I need to take care of myself. And I remember last Sunday I said something about exercise, and I'm thinking, well, I got to do something about that. So I'm running, and I'm sort of thinking, well, you know, I don't want to run, and there's really nobody around to keep a stopwatch on me, so I could stop if I want to. And then I went about 15 minutes out, and I came 15 minutes back, and on the way back there was a guy in a wheelchair, and I'm thinking how much he would like to run on that beach. Because his wheelchair, you know, they got him out as far as he could go. The tide comes in and out so far, so it was way out. He could go pretty far, but it was still real wet, and he couldn't go much further. Couldn't, could he? Somebody's got to push him to do that. You know, who appreciates stuff more? The people who were the last ones in, because they just got a job. And they're still really close to the feeling of standing idle all day long, of no value to anybody, worried about where they'll sleep, worried if they'll feed the kids, worried if they'll have a life, worried if anybody thinks anything of them, but just walk on by them. If they got somebody that finally noticed them and gave them what they couldn't get for themselves and put them in the back of the truck and said, I'm going to reward you handsomely for it, it's amazing. If you lose touch of the fact that you are so lucky to be saved, you are so lucky to be a Christian in this world today. You are so lucky to have the God of everything care about you and know your name and want to be at your house today, want to be involved in every part of your life. You're so lucky. But if you lose a feeling about being lucky, you know what you do? You may be called a Christian, but then your life, there's no joy. And what Jesus, I think, is saying is the first or last, because sometimes the longer you've been in this, unless you're taking care of your relationship, the more you've lost of that initial joy of being invited to be a part of something. I was reading something about ministers who have been involved in intimacy abuse. Y'all know what I'm talking about, abuse in the church. And they did some studies about this, and it was just talking. In fact, by the way, that Catholic church, they had all the brochures about the church, and one of them was a policy on sexual abuse. And one of the things they said is they looked at people, ministers from all denominations, all stripes, who have been involved in stuff like that, is there were some factors that they found. One was loneliness, because ministers can be awfully lonely. One was spiritual emptiness. And then a sense of omnipotence that some ministers have, because everybody comes to them. And then I thought this was interesting in the study. One of the things they said was that sometimes these ministers were denying themselves the medicine that they were trying to dispense to their congregation. And the medicine was the need for confession, to cleanse your soul, and the recognition that you need help outside of you. And the minister's trying to do it all. Now, I think that could be anybody, by the way, in this world. And I want you to think about that, because I believe that one of the things we all ought to do every day is be sure that we move more and more into the center of the realm of God for our lives. Now, let me just put it plainly. Work on your relationship. Work on your relationship. Be sure you pray. I'm talking about talking to God now. I'm not talking about reciting my prayer or doing somebody else's stuff. Be sure you read the Bible, and not just for some class preparation, but just even reading a verse a day and saying, God, what do you want to say to me today? And say that verse over and over again. Because people all over the centuries have said, God's talking to me through this book. And serve. You know, a lot of times people who say, I'm not good at reading, I can't ever get the prayer stuff going real well, but I can work with my hands, like the carpenter of Nazareth, Jesus. And sometimes in the work, the service, doing something for somebody else with no benefit to you, that's when they sort of felt closer to God than any other time. There's lots of stuff, but I'm just saying, if you don't do something to work on the relationship, you're going to have a religion that's empty. You're going to be lonely. You're going to be missing out of the joy that makes you feel so lucky to be alive. So lucky to be here. And just one quick word. As our church grows and as we move toward the future, y'all please help us. Let's make sure we keep this a relational thing at Williams. I mean, think about why you're here and why you want to stay here in the church. Isn't it about the relationships that you see here and that you have here? It's about relationships with brothers and sisters, relationship with friends. It's about a relationship, hopefully, you're developing with God. And we don't want to lose that stuff with all kinds of rules and structures and anything else because we're getting so big. You see what I'm saying? Let's don't lose that. Somebody said that the marks of a relational church involve unifying, reconciling, sanctifying, and proclaiming. Okay? So let's just simply agree that we're going to keep proclaiming Jesus. Okay? We're going to keep trying to be sure we're building consensus to be one on stuff. And we're going to be sure that we're trying to keep on loving each other and reconciling the differences that we have between us and the world. And that we're going to be sure we're on the road marching to Zion, trying to be holy, good people in this world. C.S. Lewis once said that lovers look into each other's eyes. They love each other so much and their gaze is in each other's eyes. But friends stand beside each other and they look at something that's important to both of them. There's a mouthful in this vineyard story today. Let us not forget that this whole thing is about relationship. And since it's about relationship, God wants us to make sure we work on our relationships with each other and with Him. What was the greatest commandment? Do y'all remember? Somebody asked Him, what's the greatest thing you can do to honor God? You should love Him with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And then Jesus volunteered another thing. Since we can't always see that, what you can see is what? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Be sure we work on that relationship stuff. Because to me, if you lose a relationship, it's a great organization, but it ain't church. Amen? Amen. I invite you to respond in any way God is touching your heart today. Maybe to do that where you are, to sort of say, God, I want to work on that relationship a little more. Maybe I've neglected you some, ignored you, been too busy, and I want to focus on you some more. I want you to help me with that. Maybe you want to join our church and be a part of what we're trying to do, to be a church that relates to people, to community, and to God better. Maybe you want to just say, I'm ready to take that step and be a follower of yours. Whatever it is, we invite you to come forward this morning if you feel led to do that. Let us stand and sing.
579. 579.
Glad you're all here today. Gary, I'm going to ask you if you would, and then Megan, if you want to, meet me in the back door back there and people can greet him. Gary was our interim pastor before I came here and is our campus minister at Jacksonville State. So get a chance, if you hadn't met him or talked to him in a while, he'll be back there. And we appreciate y'all coming today. And hope y'all go give blood Wednesday. It's a fun thing to do. Get juice and Lorna Doone cookies. I love those things. All right, Brother Roy.
I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For lying on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For if I am on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. God bless you. Have a great day. Don't worry. Be happy. All right.